So you're doing some 10 pulls on the current banner and you get 4-star Faruzan. So we just did her basics guide in the video yesterday. This video is going to be her Artifact Grinding Hell video, where we do a little bit of a deeper dive, specifically talking about C6 Faruzan. But if you do want to know more about the basics of her, like how her skill and her burst work without C6, then do be sure to go check out this video from yesterday. So I am using footage from my editor Doggy's account because he not only has C6 Faruzan, which I didn't have until like a couple hours before making these videos, but he also has a top 1% Zhao. I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to have that in one of my videos. So real quick, let's touch base on this Faruzan that we're using. And I'm going to mirror myself so that way I can look at my screen. Like I said, his Faruzan is C6 with 16,000 roughly HP, attack 1300, EM 98, crit split 70 over 89.6, that crit rate is most important, and the energy recharge 275.2, as well as having an Animo Goblet. For weapons, level 90 R5 Favonius Warbow, which is her best 4-star. For artifacts, he's actually running Emblem. Emblem is one of the 4 artifact sets. Yes, Doggy, I said I was not going to talk about 4. I am going to talk about 4 artifact sets that we're going to talk about in this video. And we're going to talk about these artifact sets kind of one by one. Next, her talents are 1, 10, 13, having a crowned burst. And like I said, she is C6. So let's go talk about Faruzan in this party, which is one of her support roles, right? So as this is going on behind me, just kind of also showing off the top 1% Zhao, right? Faruzan is going to be using her burst to support Zhao. Because of how her burst works, especially being a C6, it is going to increase the Animo crit damage of Zhao being on the field. And we have Farina doing that. And we have Cloud Retainer also helping Zhao. This is very, very much that's probably already finished behind me. I think I ran it a couple times. This is very, very much a hyper carry Zhao team, where Zhao is going to be doing the majority of, if not all of, the damage for the team. So because Faruzan is C6, when using her burst, you're going to see a lot of the pressurized collapse going on from enemies taking damage, Animo damage, while in the triangle of her burst, kind of in its area. This plays directly into 2 of the 4 artifacts that we are going to talk about. Since he already has Emblem equipped to Faruzan, we are first going to look at Emblem. This set is just going to increase her damage from her burst as well as the energy recharge, but because her burst only does damage on the initial hit, from her summoning it, not every single triangular pulse, she's not getting a lot out of this. She's mainly just getting that energy recharge and then the initial burst damage, which I think she actually hits like 20k in here somewhere. So real quick, before we start doing some tests to show, we're going to look at the main stats and the substats of the artifacts that you want for Faruzan. Now, most of them, all of them except for the very last artifact set that we're going to look at, are going to have the same main stats and substats. So his flower, energy recharge, crit rate, which are the 2 that you want the most of. You want the energy recharge, so that way you have her burst more readily available, and crit rate because of the passive of Favonius Warbow. Defense percent, elemental mastery, not very big. Those 2 substats are going to actually not necessarily be wanted. He does have an artifact that has like perfect substats. Could have used better rolls, Doggy. Perfect substats. The plume, crit damage, EM, crit rate, and defense. Again, if this had energy recharge instead of EM, would have been much, much better, or had some rolls into crit rate. So energy recharge main stat with crit damage and crit rate, this is going to be really. Now his goblet. Animo damage, crit damage, attack percent, energy recharge, crit rate. This has all of the perfect substats that you want. If you want to maximize your Faruzan in these specific situations for the first 3 artifact sets, this right here, these substats are how you do it. I think one of those attack rolls could have gone into either crit rate or ER, and that would have made it better. His weakest piece is definitely his circlet. Crit rate, EM, attack percent, HP defense, no ER in this. If either HP or defense would have been, or EM would have been ER, so it would have been much, much better. And crit damage as well. This is definitely the weakest piece, but getting that crit rate up is the most important. I do 100% understand that whenever I'm standing here saying, oh, get these substats, get this, get that, we don't control that. We don't control what Genshin gives us. So whenever I'm saying this kind of stuff, this is the ideal things. It is not like, oh, your character sucks without this stuff. No. This is just what to look out for to whether or not you know you could possibly have a good artifact for this character. So when somebody says like, you need to get up your attack, you need to get up this, take it with a grain of salt. We have no control over it. I always just want to say that in these videos because I do see a lot of content creators being like, you have to get this up, this is optimal, and this and that. We don't control that. We can only do what we can do. So now that we have looked at the artifacts in the Artifact Grinding Hell video, we are going to look at a comparison. We are going to leave this set on Faruzan, and we're going to go into a domain that does not give any bonus to Xiao or Faruzan. We're going to go into a domain that has everything to do with Dendro. Since we can't swirl Dendro, and we don't have any Dendro on our team, we're never going to get a bonus from this. This is just going to be Xiao and Faruzan doing what they do, and we're going to look at this artifact set compared to the next artifact set. We're going to go in here, we are going to just be using Xiao and Faruzan, and on the plunges, Xiao's maximum that he's going to hit is 69k. It's like 69.7k. So the only two things giving Xiao a buff are Faruzan's passive and Faruzan's C6 from her burst. So this is going to put him still under 70k on the plunges. Now we're going to take off Emblem and put 4-piece Tenacity. Now, you might be saying she can't use the HP, or the HP is unusable for her, right? Like that's not a main stat for her. You're correct. However, the 4-piece, when the elemental skill hits your opponent, it is going to give a 20% attack increase to your whole party. Now, you're also probably saying, if you've never seen C6 Faruzan, that we are using her burst, we are not using her skill. However, well, C6 Faruzan gives a crit damage increase for Animo, as well as applying the pressurized collapse part of her skill to the enemy when they take damage while her burst is going on, if they are affected by the burst. This triggers her skill. This is considered skill damage, even though it's put on the enemy by the burst, it is considered skill damage every 3 seconds, which gives a 100% uptime for Tenacity. This is insane. Because of how this works, this is only viable with C6 Faruzan. If you have anything below C6, if you have C5 or below, this will not work with Faruzan. You have to have C6. So now we're going to go back into the same domain with just using Xiao and Faruzan, and Xiao is now going to be hitting 77k. That is an 8,000 damage increase per plunge because of the 4-piece Tenacity. With Tenacity, you're still going to be running the same stats. You still want the same sub-stats. So that way Faruzan can still get some of her own damage in. You still want the energy recharge, so that way you can have her burst readily available or available off of cooldown, so that way you can always have this Tenacity passive going. This is a really, really good set for Faruzan. Again, C6 Faruzan only. So now we are going to go look at another artifact set, the third one, where this is going to decrease her support roll and increase her own personal damage. And that is going to be 4-piece Golden Troop. Now with Golden Troop, it increases her skill damage, and then whenever she's off the field, it increases it a lot, right? So because of how her burst works, again, it's skill damage, like we talked about with Tenacity. So this is just going to increase her own personal damage and decrease everybody else's, but the entire team damage is still going to be up because Faruzan will be doing more damage herself. Definitely not a support role. We're starting to leave the Xiao hyper carry thought in our head and get more to a rounded team to where Xiao is not doing all of the damage or the majority of the damage. We start to have other characters that are also putting in a lot of numbers, with Farina and with Faruzan now getting Golden Troop damage as well. Same stats for Golden Troop. So as long as you can still use her burst off of cooldown, or relatively close with cooldown, then you can swap to something like an attack stance, especially if you get a really, really good ER substat rolls on all of these artifacts. Now for the final one, for the final artifact set, we are going to talk about 4-piece VV. Now VV is going to increase swirl damage, and with that we are going to be completely leaving the mono animo team that we've been running with Xiao, and start looking at introducing other elements, maybe running something like a rainbow team. Now, Doggy made me promise that if I used his videos, if I used his Faruzan and his Xiao in this video, I had to put Lisa in this video. So we are going to be running a rainbow team with like Faruzan, Lisa, and Benny. There's going to be much more of an electro charge team with how it's going to work, but it will still allow Yelan to get some vapes in with her skill, as well as attack buff the whole team, mainly Faruzan. And with this, we would be running kind of on-field Faruzan, using her skill as much as possible, so that way we're swirling with her skill, letting her burst, get some swirls into, grouping everybody together, kind of trying to get them into Lisa's burst, also getting the Hydra application with Yelan. Now, if I was not contractually obligated to put Lisa in this team, I would take her out really fast and put in somebody like Hazo. Having Hazo being my driver with using Faruzan C6, Hazo would still very much enjoy having that crit damage buff, and we can still have him causing some swirls as well, making it much easier to use Yelan's burst with Hazo using his normal attacks. He would also really like Benny's burst for the attack buff. He would still like Faruzan's burst. Faruzan would still like it. We would probably build Faruzan full EM with that, just so that way, because swirl damage is calculated based on EM, so we'd probably throw EM on a Faruzan, still having enough ER to use her burst whenever we can. But I would be running Hazo on my team for my on-field swirl driver, still letting Faruzan's burst swirl with the pressurized collapse. Quick touch on weapons for Faruzan. Obviously, Favonius is going to be her best 4-star weapon. The only time that I would use a 5-star is because of one of her passives giving an attack buff to your on-field character based on her base attack, being Faruzan's and the weapon that she has equipped. Going up to a 5-star, getting that higher base attack on the weapon will increase Faruzan's base attack, meaning a higher attack buff, but you still got to have a lot of energy recharge on her. Favonius is just typically what most people run. Now, if you're going to be wanting to do more of a damage, you can do something like Stringless. You can do some other options, but Favonius Warbow is still just really, really good, and everybody has one because of the Animo Archon quest. Now, that is going to be it for this video on Faruzan. If you have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or somebody else be sure to answer it, and I will see you in the next video. Doggy, don't watch this part. I'm throwing Lisa off of the Jade Palace.